Let's talk to our man in The Sun today on page 10, Ross Clark. He's got a piece about net zero. One by one, net zero targets are being ditched as they hit reality. So let's halt 2050 altogether. That would be nice. Ross, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I mean, I wish I could agree with you, but I'm sort of confused about the way that the government seems to be handling net zero. So on the one hand, you've got them saying, "Oh, we're going to push the getting rid of diesel and petrol cars to 2035 from 2030," which doesn't seem to make an awful lot of difference. But at the same time, they're talking about building a third runway at Heathrow, expanding Luton Airport, and then at the same time, they've got Ed Miliband banging on about getting rid of gas boilers and telling people to charge more for them, so they end up getting heat pumps. So what's true?
Yeah, well, whenever these targets collide with reality, they end up being relaxed, don't they? And it's okay talking about 2050 beyond the lifetime of the political careers of the current generation of politicians. But of course, the target, when you've got a target that's actually come to take place within this parliament, and the MPs then have to be re-elected after it's met, then it's a very different story. Now, what the government has done this week, and using the Trump's tariffs as an excuse, I noticed, is to put the date for total abolition of petrol and diesel cars from 2030 back to 2035, and just go through what's happened in the past 8 years with this target. First, it was going to be 2040, then it was going to be 2035. Boris's government decided that February 2020. 9 months later, they said, no, it's going to be 2030. Then in 2023, Rishi Sunak said, no, it's going to be 2035. Last year's Labour manifesto, no, it's going to be 2030. Right. And now they say it's going to be 2035. And you think, if you're a car manufacturer trying to plan ahead, it's completely and utterly ridiculous.
Exactly. And so presumably the car manufacturers had already kind of factored in that 2030 was the date by which they were supposed to stop making these cars. The fact that they've been now given a sort of 5-year reprieve doesn't really help them, does it?
No, it doesn't. I mean, it takes sort of several years to plan and produce a new model. So, no one's going to put a lot of money into developing a model that's going to have to be taken off the market in 2035 anyway. And there's also the change that's come in this week is the government's now saying that manufacturers who produce fewer than 2,500 vehicles a year will be exempt from the ban on petrol and diesel. Well, I mean, that's, Aston Martin, Rolls-Royce and so on. So, I mean, the government's basically saying, if you're rich enough to afford a gas guzzler, then you'll be able to carry on driving petrol, diesel. Right. If you're a pleb who can only afford a family hatchback, on the other hand,
or you're driving a van for a living or something.
That's not exactly climate justice as well.
No. Well, this is the thing. In the same way that, the ULEZ charge is nothing to do with making the air cleaner. It's to do with you paying to pollute the air. That's exactly what they're doing. In the same way that, putting a tariff on the congestion charge basically means that you're paying to drive. They're not stopping you from driving. They just want you to pay money for the privilege of doing it. Let's have a look at what Keir Starmer said yesterday.
There's a global race on for the jobs of the future in relation to net zero. More investment is coming into this country in relation to renewables than any other sector. I don't think now is the time to step away from that race. Now is the time to double down on that race. Some country is going to win the race when it comes to renewables and the changes for net zero. I want Britain to be in that race, and I want us to win that race.
Isn't he being slightly disingenuous about this so-called inward investment, because most of it is subsidised heavily by taxpayers' money?
Well, what he refers to as the race, I mean, well, there is a race going on. There's always a race going on for economic domination, but the government seems to slip from that to pretending there's a global race to hit near net zero carbon emissions. Right. Well, that's a one-horse race. Britain's in it, and well, maybe other European countries as well, but China and the US aren't in that race and are interested. What they're interested in is jobs, wealth and so on. It's only us who are interested in economic sacrifice in order to reach this arbitrary target.
Right. Well, that's the trouble, isn't it? At the end of the day, the net zero mess, I suppose, for want of a better word, will bankrupt the economy faster than anything that Donald Trump can do. And one of the things, funnily enough, that Giorgia Meloni has said in the past 24 hours is that she wants to go to America and have a meeting with Trump because she's accusing the EU of having targets on net zero which are akin to bigger tariffs than Donald Trump wants to put on.
Yeah, and don't forget, Joe Biden also introduced very protectionist measures to create jobs in America, create the green jobs in America. He said, well, government will give you a grant to buy an electric car as long as it's made in the US.
Right.
And the same with other green bling and stuff. Well, nobody seemed to, accuse him of sort of closing down world trade. But
No.
He was just as protectionist, really, as Donald Trump in this, just in a sort of slightly different way.
Well, generally speaking, most American presidents are, protectionist about their own economy. They tend to be, like most Americans, very kind of, shall we say, devil may care about the rest of the world. They don't really know much about it. They don't really care what goes on in the rest of the world. They're not really that interested, which is why most Americans now certainly don't want anything to do with Ukraine, certainly don't want anything to do with Afghanistan, and would rather not put any American troops at any sort of risk in any part of the world because they don't care about it.
No, yeah, but it's true that US presidents do tend to dabble with protectionism, all of them. But even so, until last week, the US had the lowest average import tariffs of any country in the world, apart from Hong Kong and Macau.
Yeah.
US had average tariffs about 3.5%, and Britain it's about sort of 4.5-5%, and in the EU is very similar to Britain. So, countries tend to. US presidents tend to threaten tariffs, but what has made America rich, of course, is actually the opposite. We're having very open trade, and if these tariffs were to persist, then it would be very different for the US.
Yeah, absolutely right. So, I mean, I suppose the $64,000 question, or perhaps the $64 billion question is, will the economy force Keir Starmer to start reversing more of these net zero policies, or will he try, as he says, to hang in there?
Well, the target really to look at next is the 2030 target for the complete decarbonisation of the national grid. Now, the government's already sort of slightly watered this down. It was going to be 100% green energy in the electricity system by 2030. It's now subtly been reduced to 95% carbon-free energy. But almost everybody, apart from Ed Miliband and the people he actually pays to tell him it's possible, are telling him it's not possible. It's not just a case of building wind farms and solar farms. You've got to sort of provide the backup. You've got to reconfigure the national grid to carry the renewable energy, because at the moment we have a grid which is based on a sort of large or relatively small number of large coal-fired power stations in the Midlands. And, when you've got sort of wind farms in the north of Scotland, that's not the national grid that you really need. So, I mean, there'll be masses of work to achieve a zero carbon electricity grid, and fantastic expense, which of course will be passed on to consumers. And my bet is that target is not going to last this government, this parliament.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Ross Clark, who's got a big page 10 piece on The Sun today. One by one, net zero targets are being ditched as they hit reality. So let's halt 2050 altogether, is what he says. You can get that, of course, as soon as you open the paper. It's on page 10 every single day. They've always got a great columnist today. It's Ross Clark.